There he is. Officer, that's the man who broke into my house. Arrest him. The voice, a shrill and panicked shriek, tore through the quiet suburban afternoon. Marcus Thorne just stood there, his hand clenched around the handle of his suitcase, staring at the flashing red and blue lights painting stripes across the pristine glass and steel facade of his own home. He was Marcus Thorne, founder and CEO of Thorne Digital Fortress, one of the world's leading cybersecurity firms. He had just returned 2 weeks early from sealing a major project in Seoul. The woman pointing at him from his front porch, a woman he recognized as Carolyn Vance, the overzealous president of the Homeowners Association HOA, had apparently moved in while he was gone. Worse, she was wearing his silk bathrobe. The absurdity of it was staggering. She had called the cops on him for trespassing on his own property, while she was the one living there. But little did Carolyn know. His early return wasn't a coincidence. And the phone he was holding up wasn't just for taking vacation photos. She had just walked into the most elaborate, technologically documented trap of her life. The story of how this HOA Karen got herself arrested for felony burglary in front of the entire neighborhood was absolutely insane. It all started 6 months earlier, when Marcus bought what he considered his dream home. After years of grinding, living in cramped city apartments while building his company, he finally had the means to purchase a piece of tranquility. It was a large, modern structure of glass and steel, nestled in the wealthy, exclusive subdivision of Emerald Hills Estates, a place that promised peace and privacy. The kind of place with more lawn care services per capita than a professional golf course. Marcus traveled constantly for work. His clients were international corporations with complex digital security needs. So his home was his sanctuary, his fortress of solitude. The one fly in the ointment, the one he hadn't properly accounted for, was the Homeowners Association and its president, Carolyn Vance. Marcus's first encounter with Carolyn was less than a week after he moved in. She appeared on his doorstep, a clipboard clutched to her chest like a holy tablet. She was a woman in her 60s, desperately trying to look 40 with unnaturally blonde hair pulled into a severe ponytail and a wardrobe of what looked like expensive but slightly ill-fitting resort wear. She drove a 10-year-old Mercedes sedan that she kept immaculately polished, a perfect metaphor for her entire existence, projecting a status she didn't quite have. With a smile that never reached her cold eyes, she informed him that his choice of mailbox, a sleek, minimalist black steel design that matched the house, was non-compliant. The approved model was a faux colonial monstrosity in forest green. The fine was $50 per day. Marcus tried to be reasonable. He explained that the mailbox was part of the home's architectural design, but it was like talking to a brick wall. A very condescending brick wall. "The rules are the rules for a reason," she'd chirped. "They maintain the aesthetic integrity of our community." Marcus looked from her faux colonial-loving face to his hyper-modern glass house and wondered what aesthetic she was talking about. To avoid a protracted battle while he was still unpacking, he relented and bought the ugly green mailbox. It was a mistake. It showed her he would yield. The violations that followed were a cascade of pettiness. His garbage bins were visible from the street for exactly 45 minutes past the designated morning pickup time. A small ornamental Japanese maple tree he planted was not on the pre-approved list of flora. He received a warning because a package was left on his porch for more than 3 hours. An eyesore. According to the letter she slid into his non-compliant turned compliant mailbox. Each infraction came with a smugly written notice and the threat of a fine. It was suburban warfare by 1,000 paper cuts. His next-door neighbor, a retired Boeing engineer named Henderson, caught him one afternoon as he was sullenly measuring the height of his lawn with a ruler. The older man chuckled. "Getting the Carolyn treatment?" "I see," he said. leaning on his fence. "Don't let her get to you. She's been running this HOA like her own personal fiefdom for a decade. She lives in one of the original smaller ranch houses at the entrance. And I think she's pathologically jealous of anyone who moves into one of the newer, bigger places." Henderson told him she'd once tried to find a family because their visiting grandchild's birthday party had excessive balloonage. This was the woman who held sway over their slice of suburbia. And Marcus had a feeling that her scrutiny of him carried a different, deeper layer of resentment that Henderson was too polite to name. It wasn't just his modern house she disliked. It felt like his very presence in her community was an affront. Then came the big one, a lucrative, high-stakes contract in Seoul that would require him to be overseas for a full month. It was a major opportunity, and he couldn't pass it up. As a courtesy, and because the HOA bylaws demanded it for any absence longer than 2 weeks, he sent a formal email to the board notifying them of his travel dates. He specified he would be leaving on May 1st and returning on June 1st. He set his home's state-of-the-art security system, a network of his own design that went far beyond simple motion detectors. It was his profession, after all. Every door, every window was censored. Internal and external cameras were positioned for total coverage. The smart home system logged every single interaction, from the thermostat to the refrigerator. It was less a security system and more a digital ghost that watched over the house. The first week in Seoul was a blur of meetings and presentations. It wasn't until the second week that he noticed the anomalies. Marcus was a man who thrived on data, on patterns, and the patterns in his home's data logs were wrong. A tiny alert he had programmed for himself popped up. The thermostat in the master bedroom had been manually adjusted from its energy-saving away mode of 65 degrees to a very comfortable 72 degrees. He brushed it off as a glitch. Then, 2 days later, another alert. The smart fridge, which logs its inventory via weight sensors on the shelves, registered the addition of a gallon of 2% milk, a brand of yogurt he never bought, and a bottle of cheap rosé. His blood ran cold. He didn't drink cheap rosé. He pulled up the live feed from his home's media server. Someone had accessed his Plex account the night before and watched 3 hours of a reality TV show about selling luxury real estate. This was not a glitch. This was an intrusion. With a growing sense of dread, Marcus navigated through his secure portal and accessed the internal camera feeds. His heart hammered against his ribs. There, on his living room couch, were Carolyn and her meek, balding husband, Gary. She was wearing one of his expensive cashmere throws over her shoulders, sipping from one of his crystal wine glasses. Gary was channel surfing with his remote control. They were watching his 85-inch television, their shoes off, feet propped up on his ottoman. It was surreal. They weren't robbing him. They were living in his house. His mind raced, trying to process the sheer audacity. The HOA had a bylaw requiring homeowners to provide a key for emergency access. It was a contentious rule he had fought, arguing it was a security risk, but he was outvoted. Carolyn, as president, was the keeper of these keys. She must have let herself in under some fabricated emergency and, upon finding the place empty, decided to upgrade her lifestyle for a month. She saw his email. She knew his return date. She thought she had a clear runway. A white-hot wave of rage washed over him. He wanted to call the Seattle police right then and there. He wanted them to kick down his own door and drag her out. But then, the professional in him took over. The cold, methodical strategist that his clients paid a small fortune for. It would be his word, a frantic voice on a bad connection from Seoul against hers. She was the HOA president. He was the absentee homeowner. She could claim she was there for an inspection, that there was a water leak. Any number of lies. He needed more than just a picture. He needed a case. He needed irrefutable, crushing, undeniable proof. He leaned back in his Seoul hotel chair, thousands of miles away, and began to work. His fortress of solitude was now his laboratory. For the next week, he became a digital ghost, haunting his own house from his laptop. He spent every spare moment outside of his work meetings meticulously gathering a mountain of evidence. He downloaded every second of footage from all 16 of his high-definition cameras. He had crystal-clear video of Carolyn and Gary eating his food, sleeping in his bed. He watched her wander into his home office, running her hands over his leather chair as if testing it out for size. The most infuriating footage came from the master closet. He had footage of her trying on his deceased wife's jewelry, holding a diamond necklace up to her neck and preening in the mirror. It transformed the mission from a matter of principle into something deeply personal. But emotion couldn't cloud the process. His smart home data logs created a minute-by-minute timeline of their occupation. He knew every time they used the Sonos system, their taste running to cheesy 80s soft rock. He had logs from the smart toilet. He created a spreadsheet cross-referencing the power consumption of the guest bedrooms against their vacancy, proving they had hosted guests. On one occasion, he watched in silent rage as they entertained another couple on his back patio, serving them his best single malt scotch and boasting about the perks of being on the HOA board. The key, he knew, would be to prove intent. This is where modern technology gave him an almost unfair advantage. Many of his internal security cameras had microphones. His state's laws operated on one-party consent for recording conversations. And since he was a party to the surveillance of his own home, he could legally record them. He remotely activated the audio on the camera in his home office, the room where Carolyn seemed to spend an inordinate amount of time. He hit pay dirt almost immediately. He recorded a phone conversation she had with a friend, her voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "Oh, it's fabulous. Marge," she crooned. "The owner is some new money tech mogul who's off in Asia for a month. The house is just sitting here empty. The least I can do is make sure everything is operational." She laughed, a sound like grinding gravel. "We'll be sad to go back to our little shoebox next to the main road." But that was nothing. The real bombshell, the piece of evidence that would utterly annihilate her, came 2 days later. He was listening in live when Carolyn took a speakerphone call in the office. A man's slick voice filled the room. "Everything's set for Saturday. Carolyn," the voice said, "the Millers are thrilled. I sent you the final draft of the forged power of attorney. It looks perfect." Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Power of attorney. "Excellent. Stan," Carolyn replied, her voice low and conspiratorial. "They're a good, traditional family, a much better fit for the community. If you ask me, I've already told them the owner is in financial distress. A fire sale, essentially. They think they're getting the deal of a lifetime." "It's a huge risk," Stan the realtor warned. "What if this Thorne character comes back early?" And then Carolyn delivered the line that sealed her fate. Her voice was sharp, dismissive. "He won't. I have his itinerary. He's not due back until the 1st. By then, the sale will be in escrow and the deposit will be non-refundable. It will be a legal nightmare he can't untangle from Asia. Now just make sure the private showing on Saturday goes smoothly. We need to close this." It clicked into place with sickening clarity. She wasn't just living in his house. She was trying to sell it. She was using his absence, a forged document, and a lie about his financial status to steal his home and handpick his replacement a family she deemed more acceptable. This wasn't just trespassing and theft. This was fraud, conspiracy, and an act of pure, racially motivated malice. The rage was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper, a glacial focus. He saved the audio file, labeled it Exhibit a Conspiracy. Wave. and backed it up on 3 different secure servers. It was time to contact his lawyer. He sent a heavily encrypted email to Julian Croft, a shark of a litigator he'd worked with on corporate espionage cases. The subject line was urgent, unprecedented criminal action. He attached a single still image of Carolyn on his couch and the password-protected audio clip. Julian's reply came within 7 minutes. "Call me now!" When Marcus got him on a secure line, Julian's initial reaction was stunned silence, followed by a low whistle. "Marcus," he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and professional glee. "In 30 years of law, I have seen some truly brazen things. But this is a masterpiece of idiotic entitlement and blatant criminality. We're not just talking about a civil suit. We are looking at multiple felony charges." He wasn't just his lawyer anymore. He was a very enthusiastic partner in the coming operation. They spent the next hour mapping out the strategy. A simple arrest was too good for her. She deserved a public downfall. The plan was audacious. The private showing was on Saturday. Marcus's original return date was still over a week away. "We're not going to stop the showing, Marcus," Julian said, his voice humming with energy. "We're going to attend it." The trap was set. Marcus booked a new flight, not to Seattle, but to a private airfield nearby. Julian began making calls, preparing a legal firestorm. Marcus's COO, a sharp and unflappable woman named Amina, was looped in to help coordinate the logistics from the States. Carolyn Vance thought she was the executive producer of her own private real estate show. She had no idea that the real owner was about to make a guest appearance, and the season finale was going to be spectacular. The 12-hour flight from Seoul felt like a countdown. It wasn't fatigue from the time difference. It was a thrumming, coiled anticipation. Marcus spent the hours going over the plan with Julian one last time via the plane's Wi-Fi, reviewing the digital tapestry of Carolyn's arrogance. Every photo, every log file, every audio clip was a nail for her legal coffin. Julian's final message before he landed was simple: let her play out the whole scene. The higher she climbs, the harder she falls, and enjoy the show. He landed at the private airfield, bypassing the commercial chaos. A discreet black SUV, arranged by Amina, was waiting on the tarmac. Inside was a change of clothes, not his usual tailored CEO attire, but the kind of understated, astronomically expensive casual wear favored by old-money billionaires. A Patek Philippe watch, a Loro Piana cashmere sweater, the costume for his new role. Julian was in the passenger seat, wearing a suit that cost more than Carolyn's Mercedes and a predatory smile. "Ready to buy a house?" Julian asked. "I thought I already owned it," Marcus replied, a grim smile touching his lips. They drove not to his house, but to a vantage point a block away, watching. Saturday afternoon in Emerald Hills Estates was a picture of serene wealth. At precisely 2 p.m., a sleek Range Rover pulled into Marcus's driveway. Stan, the realtor, got out, followed by a well-dressed white couple in their 50s, the Millers. A few minutes later, Carolyn's polished Mercedes pulled up, and she emerged, beaming like the lady of the manor, ready to welcome her hand-picked neighbors. "Showtime," Marcus said. He and Julian waited another 10 minutes before their SUV glided silently up the long, curving driveway. They stepped out as Stan was leading the Millers onto the back patio. Carolyn was in the kitchen, preparing a tray of drinks. Stan turned, his professional smile faltering slightly at the sight of 2 unexpected, impeccably dressed men. "Can I help you?" he asked, his eyes flicking from Marcus's watch to Julian's suit. "This is a private showing." "Julian Croft," Julian said, extending a hand and a business card. "I'm the legal representative for this gentleman. He's a potential buyer who prefers to remain anonymous. We heard the property was available for a private sale, and my client happened to be in town. We won't take much of your time." The mention of legal representative and the sheer aura of wealth radiating from them was enough. Stan, a man who lived on commission, couldn't turn them away. Of course," he stammered. "Please, come in." As they stepped inside, Carolyn came out of the kitchen. The moment she saw Marcus, the tray of champagne flutes trembled in her hands. The color drained from her face. It was a beautiful, fleeting moment of pure, undiluted panic. But her arrogance was a fortress. She recovered instantly, forcing a tight, brittle smile. She clearly didn't recognize him as the owner, but as a threat, a wealthy black man who didn't fit her curated demographic for the neighborhood. "Stan, I thought we agreed this would be an exclusive viewing for the Millers," she said, her voice sharp, directed at the realtor, but her cold eyes fixed on Marcus. "A last-minute inquiry, Carolyn," Stan explained nervously. "They're very serious." Marcus ignored her completely, his gaze sweeping across his living room as if seeing it for the first time. "It's a beautiful space," he said, his voice calm and deep. "The owner must have excellent taste." He ran a hand along his own marble countertop. "Tell me, what's his story? Why the sudden sale? Financial trouble?" I heard. Carolyn puffed up with self-importance, now fully in her element as the neighborhood gossip and gatekeeper. "Yes, it's a terrible shame." She sighed with faux sympathy. "The owner, a Mr. Thorne, he got in over his head. A tech fellow. All very new money. It's for the best. Really, the Millers are a much better fit for the stability of our community." The Millers nodded in agreement, looking uncomfortable but complicit. "I see," Marcus said softly. He then turned his full attention to Carolyn. "So, you have the authority to facilitate this sale on his behalf?" "I do," Carolyn said with unwavering confidence. "I have his power of attorney. I am the president of the Homeowners Association. I handle these matters to protect the integrity of Emerald Hills." "Power of attorney," Marcus repeated, savoring the words. He looked at Julian, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "That's fascinating, because I don't recall ever giving it to you." The silence in the room was absolute. Carolyn's smile froze, then crumbled. Confusion warred with dawning horror on her face. What did you say?" Marcus finally met her gaze, his own eyes like chips of ice. "My name is Marcus Thorne, and this is my house." He let the words hang in the air. "Mr. Miller gasped. Stan the realtor looked like he was about to faint. But Carolyn's survival instinct was to attack. "That's impossible. You're lying. This is a trick security," she shrieked, fumbling for her phone. "Don't bother," Julian said, stepping forward. He placed a slim tablet on the coffee table. "Carolyn Vance, Stanley Moss, you are both parties in a conspiracy to commit wire fraud, mail fraud, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent, but I doubt it will do you much good." He pressed play. The audio filled the room, Carolyn's smug voice, Stan's slick replies, their entire criminal plan laid bare for the Millers to hear. A much better fit for the community. Legal nightmare he can't untangle. As the recording ended, 2 uniformed Seattle police officers and 2 plainclothes detectives, who had been waiting discreetly down the street, walked calmly through the front door, which Julian had left open. Carolyn stared, speechless, as a detective approached her. "Carolyn Vance, you are under arrest." The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut echoed in the pristine, sunlit living room. Stan was already babbling, promising to cooperate, trying to pin all the blame on her. His betrayal was swift and pathetic. The Millers stood frozen, their faces pale with shock and embarrassment, caught in the middle of a crime they were about to benefit from. Marcus looked at them, not with anger, but with a quiet disdain. "I believe your showing is over," he said calmly. "Please leave my home." They scurried out without a word. As the police led a whimpering, utterly defeated Carolyn away, my neighbor Henderson, who had been trimming his roses and watching the entire drama unfold, caught my eye. He gave a slow, deliberate nod of approval, a gesture that conveyed more satisfaction than 1,000 words. The Queen had been deposed, not in some stuffy boardroom, but in a humiliating public spectacle on the steps of the very palace she had tried to steal. Her downfall was absolute. Faced with incontrovertible evidence, both she and Stan took plea deals to avoid longer sentences. She lost everything: her house, her reputation, her freedom. The HOA was thrown into chaos, and Henderson was unanimously elected to clean it up, starting with the repeal of the emergency key bylaw. Weeks later, Marcus sat on his back patio, the same patio where Carolyn had planned to toast to her victory. He poured himself a glass of that very same single malt scotch, the bottle now rightfully his to enjoy. The air was calm. His home was his own again. He had built a fortress of code to protect corporations, but he learned that the most important fortress is the one you call home. And sometimes, to protect it, you have to let the wolves in the front door just so you can lock it behind them. Thank you for following this story. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. If you'd like more inspiring stories about justice and resilience, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll be back tomorrow with another must-see story you won't want to miss.